All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another season, I guess, of Real Graps here on WIR Iona University Radio. I am your host, Joe Gierer, and it's very nice to finally be sitting down and doing this show again. Although I might add that it was a very nice time during the summer having that time off. And obviously, I don't know who saw what I posted or what I said last time when I was here back in May. That was the last time we were able to sit down and have this talk. But I did say that I would be continuing the show on my own personal YouTube channel from my house throughout the summer. And that turned out to not be the case. That did not end up being the case, only because I got too comfortable being like a casual fan again. And I know I'm still a casual fan of the WWE, but it was always nice to just have that, it was always nice to just have that sit down, relax, watch the show with my family, not be on the phone all the time, typing out notes, getting ready to prepare a show. It was nice to just relax after the full semester and just enjoy the show for what it was worth instead of preparing an entire show that I wanted to say myself. So I did enjoy the time off, but it's nice to be back. It's nice. We'll have a full semester this time talking about not only the road to WrestleMania, because I started late last year. We're going to be able to talk about, decompress from SummerSlam, get towards Survivor Series, cover the latter half of the John Cena Farewell Tour, which has been the big story of the year this far, as we talked about all the way back in May before I was gone for 3 months. But nonetheless, it's nice to be back. Have a lot to talk about now. WWE, the landscape has changed tremendously since the last time that we sat down and spoke about this together. So I'm very excited to be doing another semester, another season of this show. And hopefully we'll be able to overtake everything that we did last semester, because that was my first time on camera, first time behind a microphone. I feel that we're going to make significant strides this year, and I'm looking forward to doing a new show. For anybody that's watching for the very first time, the way this show worked last semester is that it was more of like talk about what happens in wrestling for the week on all three shows, being Raw, NXT, and SmackDown in chronological order. Give my thoughts about the ongoing storylines, maybe predict some upcoming matches and PLEs that were, on the horizon, maybe happening that weekend. I'm back on Tuesdays again, this time a little bit later at 1 o'clock. Last semester was 11 o'clock. But nonetheless, we're starting at a good time, starting at a very good time this year, because not only has the landscape of WWE changed in that some people have turned face, others have turned heel. We have new champions. We've gone through Money in the Bank already on both sides, men's and women's. So it's an entirely different landscape, really. But not only that, the WWE struck down a deal worth billions of dollars for many, many years with ESPN recently that was supposed to take place in 2026, where all main roster PLEs would now be shown on ESPN platforms and not Peacock anymore. Peacock remained the streaming site for NXT PLEs, and it's now the streaming site for Saturday night's main event, whenever those should happen. But the big deal with ESPN has resulted in some very big returns, we'll say, and it's set up for a really nice pay-per-view, or PLE rather, on ESPN. The debut happening this weekend. It was originally supposed to happen in 2026, but I think WWE overstayed their welcome with PLE shows on Peacock, and that forced them to pivot and start on ESPN early, which led us to getting a really good looking PLE for this weekend, as they'd want to make a bang in their ESPN debut. So with all that out of the way, without further ado, we'll get back to regular programming on this show. I'm not going to talk about everything that's happened in the last week, mainly just focus on Raw, the upcoming shows, that being NXT Homecoming tonight and WrestlePalooza. As much as I hate that name, I was not a fan when that got announced. But regardless, it seems to be a very good show coming up. And, talk about that, predict those matches, see how everything is going to shape out next week on Raw, NXT SmackDown after WrestlePalooza, and build towards the next premium live event in October, which I believe is Crown Jewel in Australia, if I'm getting it right off the top of my head. So without further ado, we'll dive in, but I'd be remiss to not open this show by mentioning the very unfortunate departure of Andrade from WWE that was reported in the last week or so, maybe 4 days. I can't remember exactly when the initial report broke, but it was devastating news to a lot of big fans. I was very upset because, in my opinion, Andrade, and I feel like in many people's opinions, Andrade was one of the very best wrestlers in ring performer that WWE had to offer. Anytime he'd roll out on SmackDown, you knew you were in store for something good. That best of 7 series with Carmelo Hayes that happened late last year was one of the best things of the entire year because every match was magnificent. I don't think they botched once, if I'm being completely honest. If I remember correctly, I don't think that they botched at all. But Andrade was one of the top workers in WWE in the ring. And he was coming off a really good tag team run that they had just started up with Rey Fenix, which was a little confusing why they cut him. But as the reports started to come out, it started to make a little more sense. The main report was that it was happening due to disciplinary reasons. There was a report that came out that he was sent home from SmackDown a couple of weeks back, and he hasn't been back since. There was another report that said that he disappeared to South America for weeks and was unreachable by WWE. Many people tried to get in contact with him, but he just wasn't picking up the phone. And when you're a professional in the WWE, especially a performer, stuff like that cannot fly. And should those reports be true, you would think there's some bad blood between the parties, and the release was warranted, as bad as it may be for guys who love watching Andrade perform in the ring. Now, Andrade did post on social media and just simply thanked WWE. It didn't seem like there was any hard feelings on his end. So what really went on with that departure, many people could speculate. A lot of people thought that it was maybe a weird working environment with him and his wife, Charlotte Flair, who obviously has higher pedigree in that company, being one of the greatest female wrestlers in the history of the business. But their recent divorce, there was speculation about that kind of thing, but we're not going to do that here on this show. I just want to wish Andrade the best in his future endeavors wherever he goes, and I'll be keeping up and watching because I really did enjoy watching him perform in the wrestling ring. Now, with that finally out of the way, we are back to regularly scheduled programming, and we're throwing it back to last semester because we're going to open up this week by simply talking about Monday Night Raw last night, which in my opinion was a really good show. You had great segments. You had great matches. I don't think there was a single bad match on the show last night. I was enamored by all of them. And we'll get into that shortly. But I thought it was a really good show, and it did a good job building up some feuds maybe in the future, maybe for WrestlePalooza, which is where we opened up. But nonetheless, Monday Night Raw last night in Springfield, Massachusetts. And if you're going to be in Springfield, Massachusetts, who better to open up the show than the great, the now face, John Cena. Whereas last time we talked, hey, John Cena was still WWE champion. He's no longer. That now belongs to the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes, yet again. But John Cena is a face. He turned face again before SummerSlam, as anybody watching would know. He went out there, and ever since that, he's been putting on phenomenal matches. I don't know where it came from, where he's been hiding this. Maybe he's been hiding it to use at the end of his run. But regardless, John Cena came, opened up the show on Raw last night. His time on SmackDown ended in Chicago, I believe. Did it end in Chicago? I believe it did. But John Cena's run on SmackDown is over. His remaining shows will all be PLEs, and they will all be Monday Night Raws if they are weekly appearances. There was one announced for Boston in November and the following week for Madison Square Garden in New York City, where I reside, which I believe I'll be going to that show. And I'm going to try and make that show down to his final match in December. But not to go on a tangent, John Cena opened up Monday Night Raw last night with a simple promo. I was kind of hoping he had a match on every show from this point out in his retirement tour, because time is ticking down. I believe he only has 6 appearances left, and 4 or so of them are already confirmed to be PLEs. So it's a very weird situation that they're running out with John Cena. I think he's scheduled for a Saturday night's main event in December, which is his final match. He's scheduled for Survivor Series, I think Crown Jewel. He's also scheduled for WrestlePalooza this weekend, which right there is 4 premium live events that he'll be wrestling on to close this year. And then if you account for the appearance in Boston and the appearance in New York City, that's 6. So those could be his final 6, which would mean that if John Cena wrestles this weekend against Brock Lesnar, which we'll get to soon, we might not see him again until the end of October, which is a little weird, which makes me think that he'll be getting written off and beaten up by Brock Lesnar. We'll get to that again later in the show where I predict the WrestlePalooza card this weekend. At least what's been announced so far. Not sure if they're going to add anything new. But John Cena came out. He cut a promo to Springfield, the casual thank you face promo. The John Cena at his best as a face. I think everybody agrees that his heel run was underwhelming, whether it was on his part or on the part of the booking with Triple H and creative. But nonetheless, John Cena came out. He cut a good promo to the Springfield crowd, called out Brock Lesnar. The casual never give up John Cena stuff. Said he'll fight till the end. He's scared of Brock Lesnar, but he's going to go out there and put out his best foot forward. And he also redefined what the last real champion is, because that was his moniker back as a heel. He's claiming that he'll be the last real champion and they can make a new belt, but he's going to leave with the belt. That's not the case anymore, obviously, because John Cena already lost the WWE championship. But now he declared that the last real champion is now somebody who goes in there and leaves it all in the ring. Somebody who goes out there and tries to leave the business better than they found it. And I believe that without a shadow of a doubt, that's something that John Cena has done. And that's a moniker that he has earned the right to call himself. So no match for John Cena last night, simply a promo to lead up to his match over the weekend with Brock Lesnar that will main event WrestlePalooza, or at least I believe. Now, there was some other stuff that happened in the beginning of the show regarding LA Knight and Jey Uso, but I'm going to refrain from talking about that yet because I want to go through that whole situation at the end of the Raw recap. Now, as for other matches that happened, Lyra Valkyria, coming off a loss to Raquel Rodriguez last week, faced off with the other member of Judgment Day, who is Roxanne Perez now. I'm not sure exactly if she was a member of the Judgment Day yet back when we talked in May, but she is a full-blown member now. Held the Women's Tag Team Championships with Raquel Rodriguez after Liv Morgan got injured, which Liv Morgan is not back yet, unfortunately. Hopefully soon. But Roxanne has done a phenomenal job with the Judgment Day so far, and I feel like it's been a perfect introduction for her on the main roster. She and Lyra had a stand and deliver rematch from 2024. If anybody remembers that Women's Championship match, those two have such good chemistry together in the ring, and they really did put on a phenomenal match last night. There was a crafty finish into the Nightwing. Lyra Valkyria picked up a win, which is good. It's her first win in months, I feel like. I don't think she's won a match in a long time. She didn't even wrestle for a long time before last week against Raquel Rodriguez, where she picked up the loss. So it was nice to see Lyra back in the win column. And at the end of that match, you got the casual Judgment Day jumping, where they were going to beat up Lyra and lay her out. But Bayley made her long-awaited return, and if anybody knows what's going on with Bayley, she's had some very weird vignettes running recently in the middle of shows where it seems they're teasing a split personality disorder with her, that she's going a bit crazy in the head. She doesn't know which direction to go. You're hearing from heel Bayley. You're also hearing from face Bayley, hugger Bayley, kind of like the devil and angel on her shoulder, which I think is a nice little touch. And she finally came back last night, and that split personality disorder persona was on full display, because she saved Lyra Valkyria from the Judgment Day, laid out Raquel, laid out Roxanne. Then she had a bit of a stare down with Lyra, who looked a little scared and a little confused. And all of a sudden, Bayley just snapped, flipped that switch, jumped out of the ring and started hugging everybody. She hugged Joe Tessitore and Corey Graves on commentary. She started hugging, people in the timekeeper area. She was hugging fans. So Helga Bayley came back for at least that segment. And it seems like that's going to be a part of her character going forward, because later in the show, Lyra went backstage to thank her for saving her and see if she was okay, I guess, because she's been out for a long time. And through the door, you heard Bayley arguing with herself, her good persona arguing with her bad persona. It felt like somebody got thrown into a wall, but then she opens the door and Bayley's just sitting there on her phone on the couch. So a lot of weird things going on with her. She then yelled at Lyra Valkyria and told her to get out of the locker room, called her an idiot like she always does. So you saw a bit of hugger Bayley, and you also saw a bit of heel Bayley. So clearly there's going to be a split personality disorder going on with Bayley going forward, which I think is going to be a nice touch to the character, because I'm one of those people who felt like Bayley should have a little depth to this character she's been portraying since WrestleMania 40 for a while now. And to finally have a little change and run this split personality where she's part heel, part face, kind of bipolar in a way, I think it's going to be very fun to see what Bayley does in the near future, whether it's for a title or not. But I feel like this Lyra Valkyria thing is going to continue on for probably another few months. At least it seems. I don't think they're going to move on from it too quickly. In another match, Penta and Kofi Kingston faced off for the second time. Kofi got the win the first time around. Granted, a little interference, of course. The New Day are heel. They now roll around with Big G, as they call him, Grayson Waller, who has been doing a good job with them recently, but didn't do a good job last night because Penta was able to pick up the win despite a few distractions. Grayson Waller came in, ate a super kick to the face. Xavier Woods re-aggravated his neck injury, which was, it's nice to see what the New Day are doing now. I think they're very comedic and very funny, but the highlight of that match was the finish for me. And Penta hit like a springboard Mexican destroyer. I've seen him do some weird things in the ring so far. I have never seen him do a springboard Mexican destroyer. I haven't seen anybody do it. So Penta, Kofi, they put on a great match. That was very crafty and very fun of a finish. But props to those two. And after the match, Dominic Mysterio, your new AAA Mega Champion, as of Friday night, was getting interviewed. And the New Day laid out Penta, it looked like, with a chair in the backstage. So New Day, Penta, mid-card feud will continue on. And I think now that Andrade is gone, as we alluded to before, I think that we're most likely going to get the Lucha Bros reunion in WWE, that being Penta and Rey Fenix will most likely come back together to face and defeat the New Day once and for all. That's my prediction, at least. Now, Becky Lynch, CM Punk, Seth Rollins, and AJ Lee. And AJ Lee is a name that back in May, when we left here, I had no intention on ever saying on this show. A lot of people speculated for years. They hoped, they prayed that she would one day find her way back into the company. To be honest with you, I don't think that she ever had a shot. I didn't think it was ever going to happen at this point. But being a little delusional every now and then does pay off, because maybe a week or two ago, a week and a half ago at this point, AJ Lee returned to WWE to defend her husband's honor in CM Punk against Becky Lynch and against Seth Rollins. And that led to a massive announcement that AJ Lee will be competing at WrestlePalooza on ESPN in a mixed tag team match with her husband, CM Punk, to go against the greatest couple in wrestling history, Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins, at WrestlePalooza. Now, I'm very excited. AJ Lee is somebody I always watched when I was a kid. By the time she left WWE in, I think, 2015, 10 years ago, I was only 11 years old. So it made me very happy to see her come back. It's very nostalgic. I always loved watching her when I was a kid. I think a lot of kids my age did. And her run so far has been good. I think she came back. She resumed where she left off nicely. And the promo last night was good. And what I also didn't mention is that she signed a multi-year deal. So we're going to be seeing a lot more of AJ Lee to come in the future, which is very, very fun. But the promo last night was good. You had Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch come out. You had CM Punk and AJ Lee come out. They went back and forth. Becky questioned the neck health of AJ Lee, which was the reason she retired so long ago, which I thought was a nice touch to the promo. And you saw a bit of a disgruntled Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch relationship towards the end of the promo, which ended up being a ploy. Becky Lynch laid out AJ Lee with the manhandle slam towards the end of the promo and smacked the taste out of CM Punk's mouth, which has been a theme over the last 3 weeks of wrestling. Becky Lynch just slapping CM Punk. So I think, you know what, I'll leave that for the WrestlePalooza prediction, because that gets into the match that's going to happen on Saturday. So we'll leave it off there. It was a very good segment and a nice final touch on that match before WrestlePalooza this Saturday. El Grande Americano came back, which, by the way, got Def Rebelled. Not a fan of the new theme. I liked how goofy and comedic the first one was. I thought it added so much more to his character and the type of character that he was meant to portray. But regardless of that, he had a match yesterday against Dragon Lee. Because of what happened at Worlds Collide on Friday, he is the one that slid Dominic Mysterio the piece of metal to put in his own mask off of the distraction and helped him beat Vikingo for the AAA Mega Championship on Friday night. So he and Dragon Lee had a match last night. And after 3 Americanos came out to assist, 3 in total, 2 as helpers, which don't tell anybody, but Ludwig Geiser, Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate. Those are your 3 Americanos. But they came out, they distracted, they helped El Grande pick up the win over Dragon Lee, despite AJ Styles coming out and helping. So I guess we're getting a little feud there between the El Grandes and Dragon Lee and AJ Styles. But I do not think AJ Styles' story with the Intercontinental Championship and Dominic Mysterio is quite finished yet. Stephanie Vaquer, where has she been? She's been waiting patiently ever since Evolution in July, where she won a Battle Royal to become the #1 contender to Naomi's Women's World Championship at the time. Naomi has since vacated because she and Jimmy Uso are expecting a child, which is phenomenal for them. Great. But it leaves us with a void for the Women's World Championship. Who's going to pick up that throne? Will it just be Stephanie Vaquer because she was already the #1 contender? But Io Sky was also promised a match with Naomi for the Women's World Championship before Clash in Paris and the scheduled Vaquer match was meant to happen. Then the news broke that Naomi was pregnant. She was forced to vacate the championship. So that left a void in the division. What were they going to do? It was fairly obvious what they were going to do. Io Sky, Stephanie Vaquer, Women's World Championship match, ESPN, WrestlePalooza. There's no bigger match in the women's division than that right now. We've seen Rhea Ripley and Io Sky run plenty of times, and Stephanie Vaquer versus Io Sky has been run twice on the main roster so far. Both matches without a finish. Both ended in disqualifications and no contests because of interference on the outside. So we're finally going to get that we're finally going to get that match with a definitive finish this Saturday at WrestlePalooza. Both matches that they had before warranted Fight Forever chance. So these two are most likely going to tear the house down on Saturday. I think they're going to steal the show and have the best match of the night. And Stephanie Vaquer, we haven't seen in a ring in forever, it feels like. I don't think she's had a match on Raw since before or just after Evolution. She hasn't wrestled in like 2 months. So last night, via Asuka running her mouth, as she has been since she came back, you got Kairi Sane, faced off with Stephanie Vaquer in a really good match again last night. As I said, every match last night was really, really good. And they had a phenomenal match. Stephanie picked up a win. They called it the SVB on the broadcast that she won with. It looked like an entirely different move. I don't know if that's a new permanent change to her finisher. I liked the old one, but the new one definitely looks a lot more like a finisher and a lot more impactful on the opponent, should she be able to do it. Kairi Sane is not that big of a woman. She's a phenomenal wrestler. She's able to do that move and sell it extremely well. So Stephanie came back, returned, got herself a nice win over Kairi ahead of her match at WrestlePalooza with Io Sky, who she faced off in the ring with afterwards. It looked like Asuka was going to go after Stephanie after the match. Io's music hit, she ran out. And these tempers that have been flaring for a while now with Io and Asuka. Asuka's trying to be overprotective and hold Io away from everyone else, focus on winning your championship. Asuka doesn't want her to be friends with anybody outside of she and Kairi. Anytime Io Sky goes out and talks to Rhea Ripley, she has a problem with it. She talks to Nikki Bella. Asuka has a problem with it. Last night, she showed respect to Stephanie Vaquer. Asuka had a problem with it. So one way or another, sooner rather than later, I think we're getting the full-on feud between Asuka and Io Sky. Whether it's for a Women's World Championship or not remains to be seen. But that feud will 100% happen. As do I think a match between Asuka and Stephanie Vaquer is bound to happen at some point very, very soon. Most likely a little after WrestlePalooza. We'll get there. Now, there was another Judgment Day segment, kind of a celebration of the win for Dominic Mysterio of the AAA Mega Championship. But Finn has had this ongoing problem with Dominic Mysterio buddying up with El Grande Americano because the Judgment Day doesn't know anything about El Grande Americano. And he's kind of gotten the rest of the group on board where they expect something in return. What do they expect in return? That's the question that Dominic keeps getting asked, and he keeps bypassing it. So Finn kind of exploded last night, and he said, "Keep going to him when you need help. We want to give you help." That's what JD McDonough said. "We're trying to help you. He's helping you. What's going on? What does he want in return?" And Finn Balor kind of just told him, "Next time you need help, go call your buddy El Grande. Don't come looking for us." And that's where that left off. Proper feud building up between Dom and Finn. There's been a constant tension ever since like WrestleMania, even before that, when Dom was yet to be crowned Intercontinental Champion. Still is, by the way. Dom Mysterio with 2 belts. Who would have ever thought we'd see that? But nonetheless, I don't think that's going to last very long. Because if you saw what happened after Finn stormed off, certain somebody made their way into the Judgment Day clubhouse to introduce himself as the future Intercontinental Champion. That being Rusev, fresh off of a victory in a feud against Sheamus that concluded at Clash in Paris. And as much as I love him, as much as I like to see him succeed, I don't think that you can properly book Dominic Mysterio retaining that championship over a guy like Rusev. Just look at the physical disparity between the two. Dominic is kind of a skinnier guy. He might be lanky, tall, or whatever it may be. Rusev is even bigger than him, and he's about as built as a human being can be. And he's in the best shape of his career. So I don't think that there is any reasonable way, unless it's by interference upon interference upon interference upon interference, maybe with a turn, whatever it may be, that you can have Rusev lose to Dominic Mysterio. So should that match eventually happen, unless it's ruled a no contest, I think Rusev is going to end up your new Intercontinental Champion on Monday nights. And Dominic will remain as your reigning AAA Mega Champion on Monday nights and on AAA programming. So Dominic's Intercontinental Championship reign, which I already thought would be ended by AJ Styles, seems to be coming to a halt fairly soon. Now, what I didn't talk about earlier in the show that I said opened up Monday Night Raw and was constant throughout was this ongoing feud between Jey Uso and LA Knight. Jey Uso has become another guy who a lot of people wanted to see get some more depth to the character just behind the yeet chant, because he was so good back when he was Crash Out Jay, as they called him, the right-hand man of Roman Reigns in the bloodline. And you're starting to see that again with the way Jey Uso has acted recently, especially towards LA Knight. Monday Night Raw last week ended with Jey Uso coming out to save LA Knight and Jimmy Uso. LA Knight ended up pulling a chair and saving Jimmy and Jay from further damage at the hands of the Vision, Braun and Bronson Reed. And for some reason after that, Jey Uso has this built-up aggression and anger towards LA Knight that he gave him a spear as the show ended and left him laying on the ground as the show went off the air. Obviously, a guy like LA Knight is not going to take too kindly to that. They opened up the show by arguing before John Cena even came out for his promo. And LA Knight said that in a tag match against the Vision, against the Bronsons, he said he wanted his partner to be Jimmy Uso, and Jay obviously did not take kindly to that. Before Jay could speak to Jimmy, you saw LA Knight approach Jimmy backstage and present this opportunity to him that I want you to be my partner. You've earned my trust, and I want you to ride with me side by side later tonight. Jimmy politely declined. He said he was not going to do that with Jay. He and Jay reunited as the Usos have their match at WrestlePalooza this weekend against the Bronsons, as we like to call them here. So Jimmy said no. And LA Knight was fine with it. He was okay with it. Jimmy runs into Jay in the backstage later in the show. And Jay, who already started talking like tribal chief Roman Reigns, heel Roman Reigns, earlier last week came out and told Jimmy, you have to say no. And he said it in like a demeaning way, like he was telling Jimmy what to do when he had to listen to him. That obviously didn't go over well with Jimmy. He said, I do not like your tone. I don't like how you're talking to me. You're not going to boss me around. That's what Jimmy Uso said. And immediately off commercial break, Jimmy Uso found LA Knight and he went back on his answer. He said, yes, I'll be your partner tonight, in spite of what Jey Uso told him. Fine. Main event rolls around. Tag match. The Vision, Bronson Reed, Braun Breaker versus Jimmy Uso and LA Knight. The match was good, but the match is not the main part of the show. It ended with Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker picking up the win and continuing to attack after the match, as has been the case with Raw recently, as it's been running. So Jey Uso comes out with a steel chair Just like LA Knight pulled a chair last week to save him and Jimmy, Jey Uso came out, pulled a steel chair, laid out Bronson, laid out Braun, ran him out of the ring. Saved his brother, saved LA Knight. Went over to LA Knight after the match was over and told him, yo, we good? We good now? And they dapped each other up. Same situation as last week with LA Knight saving Jey Uso. And as predicted, as predictable as it was, Jey Uso turns his back, LA Knight flips him back, kicks him in the stomach, hits him with a BFT, and runs out of the ring. Same exact ending as last week on Raw, which I saw some complaints about online, that Raw is too predictable. Raw is that. I think we can all agree here on this show that, of course, we like unpredictable on this show, but also predictable can be good sometimes, and it's warranted and needed. There's an evident feud building up between Jey Uso and LA Knight. And if they just dap each other up last week or last night, and just move on with their day, that feud comes to an abrupt end. No match, no nothing. So having LA Knight get his receipt from last week on Jey Uso at the end of the show, we knew it was going to happen, especially the way everything shaped up. But I feel like it's what needed to happen. And it was the right ending for the show, in my opinion. I'm not one of those people who's going to complain about it because there's an evident feud building up between Jey Uso and LA Knight with Jimmy Uso falling in the middle of it. And if we're going to run that program, then you have to have the story make sense. Jey took a cheap shot at LA Knight after he helped Jey out last week. Jey got a cheap shot taken on him by LA Knight this week after he helped out LA Knight. So it's this constant going story. And you might say, oh, it's so predictable. It's going to happen at the end. Predictable is needed, and predictable sometimes is good. We all predicted that Cody Rhodes was going to win the belt last year at WrestleMania 40, and I think that turned out okay. Everything since has been fine. If you don't ask the hardcore Roman fans who are very heavily against Cody Rhodes. But sometimes the predictable outcome is the good outcome, and I feel like that's what Monday Night Raw was last night with Jey Uso and LA Knight. Some quick announcements here before we move on to anything further. If you are an Iona student and interested in having your voice heard here, you can contact Robbie Basil and come by the station, and they'll help get you started with your own WIUR, Iona University radio show, just like I'm doing right now. If you don't put your voice out there, you're not going to be able to have a show. If you have an announcement for a club or an event that you'd like to promote, you can email Robbie Basil, the president of WIUR, and DM them on WIUR_Gales Radio with your post or announcement concept, and they'll get it out there very nicely. Same if you have an audio ad for WIUR or sports broadcasting, DM them on Instagram, your contact, or contact any board member, and they'll be able to get you sorted out with any information you may need with that. Now, what's in the past is in the past. It's time to look ahead at what's coming up for professional wrestling, and two big shows are coming up. Tonight, NXT Homecoming on the CW Network, 8 p.m. Tune in. It is a show that's going to welcome back several NXT legends. You have some competing on the card. You have others that'll make appearances and show up. But it's one of the bigger NXT shows of the year because of the caliber of talent that's on it and the level of name value that it has in comparison to other NXT shows. What's been confirmed for the show tonight in terms of matches, you're going to have Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair, two big names, your current women's tag team champions. They're going to face Izzy Damon, Tatum Paxley of the Culling in a tag team championship match tonight, based on a match that happened last week to determine a number one contender for tonight. So you'll have that match. Big name value there. Following, you'll have Ethan Page defending the North American Championship against Tyler Breeze, who made an entirely unexpected return last week. Tyler Breeze last had his most recent match in 2021, which was a full calendar year before I even got back into wrestling in the slightest and watched the match for the first time since like 2015. So Tyler Breeze has been gone longer than a fan like me has been back, which is a little crazy. But he made an unexpected return. Took a little selfie with Ethan Page in the ring last week. That warranted a title match, so he'll be competing tonight for the North American Championship against Ethan Page. DIY has had a mini run in NXT over the last couple weeks with Trick Williams, and you saw the reuniting of Trick Mello Gang on NXT last week. That being Trick Williams, the TNA World Champion currently, and Carmelo Hayes. So we're getting that tag match, and a lot of people thought that it didn't make sense because of the way that Trick and Mello left off, but they're both heel now. Trick was able to apologize for his actions against Mello, and I guess those two are now on the same page again, and they're going to be having a tag match later tonight against DIY, one of the best tag teams in the history of NXT, and two of the greatest superstars in the history of NXT, in Johnny Wrestling, Johnny Gargano, and Tommaso Ciampa, both former NXT champions. Very big returns to NXT in their own right. The final confirmed matchup for the night is a tag team match, 6-woman tag team match. Fatal Influence, that being Fallon Henley, Jasmine Nix, and the NXT Women's Champion, JC Jane. They'll be going against Rhea Ripley, one of the biggest, possibly biggest woman in the company, biggest name of a woman in the company, one of the biggest wrestlers, period, in the entire company. Rhea Ripley making a return to NXT. You also have Stephanie Vaquer, who we talked about before on Raw, making her return to NXT, competing in that tag team matchup. And I believe Lyra Valkyria is now confirmed as the third participant when it was originally meant to be Tiffany Stratton, but she took a nasty bump, taking a moonsault out of the ring on Friday night in her women's championship defense against Jade Cargill, which I think probably messed her up. She is not medically cleared to wrestle tonight. And as a result, you are getting a matchup with Lyra Valkyria in it. Lyra Valkyria is a big return to NXT in her own time. She was the one who defeated Becky Lynch for the NXT Women's Championship, gave her big push forward until she lost it to Roxanne Perez at Stand and Deliver last year, got called up to the main roster, inaugural Intercontinental Champion for the women's division. She's done a whole lot on the main roster since coming up. So Lyra Valkyria is a very fitting replacement for Tiffany Stratton in that matchup. Now, maybe in about the last hour and a half or so, just before our show started, there was another few announcements that were made for this show tonight. It's a lot of big names coming back to NXT. The biggest of which is Bianca Belair was advertised for NXT Homecoming tonight. Bianca has not been seen on WWE programming since she was the special guest referee for Jade and Naomi at Evolution, which she's injured, so it makes sense. But her coming back at that point had me thinking she was healed. She was going to go on a bit of a run herself. But then she disappeared again and she's rehabbing her injury. So we haven't seen Bianca very much. I don't think she's competed in a match in WWE since WrestleMania 41 when she had that phenomenal triple threat match with Rhea Ripley and Io Sky. So she's making a return tonight. At least that's what's advertised. I believe that's the reports are saying. And her returning is huge for the company in general, especially if she's healthy now and she could wrestle again, because she could be inserted in some big storylines, whether it's on Raw or SmackDown, whichever brand she returns to. Some other names that were announced for the show, I believe like 10 minutes before I went on the air, you had William Regal was announced to be there. You had Sami Zayn, former NXT champion, his big feud with Kevin Owens. He's supposed to be there tonight. And you're getting Bobby Roode, who is also huge in NXT, returning to the brand tonight for Homecoming. So a huge show coming up for NXT. What's probably going to be one of their best shows of the year by the names that are on it. It seems like it's going to be a really good one. I'm sure not all will be in the ring. Some will be in the backstage segments, but nonetheless, a lot of nostalgia there. A lot of shouts to old NXT superstars who helped build the brand up to what it is today. Should be a fun show. Should be a phenomenal show. Now to close our programming here, WrestlePalooza, WWE's premium live event debut on ESPN this Saturday, September 20th. 5 matches announced thus far. You have Io Sky versus Stephanie Vaquer for the Women's World Championship. Phenomenal matchup. You have John Cena versus Brock Lesnar. Very unexpected. Brock Lesnar, I didn't even touch on. He came back at SummerSlam when I don't think anybody knew he was coming back. Nobody knew. Nobody expected it. The reactions online were incredible when he came back. Some negative, some positive, because he does still have the ongoing stuff in the lawsuit with Vince McMahon. Was he cleared? Was he not? Is he guilty? Is he not? Who knows? But As a wrestler, it's always nice when Brock Lesnar is there. John Cena, I believe, personally requested to work him during this retirement run, and somebody of John Cena's caliber is going to get what he wants because he's earned it. He's deserved it for everything he's done over the last 25 years. So John Cena will face Brock Lesnar in what I believe is main eventing over world championship matches. The Usos are going to take on the Vision. It'll be interesting to see what happens there because this whole Jey Uso LA Knight situation is painting Jey Uso in more of a heel light. It seems like he's starting to get a little crazy over that world championship that he won back at WrestleMania. And this is exactly what Jimmy Uso was scared of when he was to defeat Roman Reigns in 2023 at SummerSlam. Jimmy said he did not want Jey to turn out like Roman Reigns. And it seems like we're closer and closer to getting Jey turning into Roman Reigns 2.0. The way he's been speaking, the way he's been moving, the way he's been acting. Is Jey going to turn heel on the night? Will it be that big moment that ESPN needs on the show to draw up buzz for future endeavors? I don't know. I have no idea. I personally don't think Jey Uso is going to turn heel on Saturday. Not on his brother. They just reunited. But it's certainly going to add some depth into his character, and that kind of stuff is definitely going to play a role during the match. But a full-blown heel turn from Jey Uso, I don't think is in the cards. You have Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch for CM Punk and AJ Lee returning for her first match in over a decade, as we alluded to earlier. And then you have Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre will be competing for the WWE Championship. Cody Rhodes has been out for over a month filming Street Fighter. He was laid out by Drew McIntyre through the announce table and been out ever since. Made his return to the company last Friday after Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton had a match in the main event of SmackDown. And they were made official. This match between Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes was made official for WrestlePalooza. That, I think, rounds out the card. I don't think we'll be seeing any last-second additions to it. It'll be a 5-match card, the doomed, the dreaded 5-match card that WWE is always putting on. But those are your 5 matches for WrestlePalooza. What do I think is going to happen? I think that Io Sky and Stephanie Vaquer is going to be match of the night. It'll be the best one. And I think Stephanie Vaquer is going to become a first-time women's world champion. Io doesn't need it anymore. He doesn't necessarily need it. Io as champion is something I'll never complain about because Io is one of my absolute favorite wrestlers in the entire company. I've also come to really love Stephanie Vaquer ever since she debuted, and I think that she does deserve a title run. Even if it's only 5 months into her main roster debut, she's that good and that popular already that they can most definitely do it. That also opens up the opportunity for Asuka to get a title match with her because Io couldn't get it done, so Asuka has to get it done. That further adds on to the Io-Asuka feud and builds them further apart so that they eventually clash heads and have a match of their own. So I'm going with Stephanie Vaquer to become your new women's world champion this Saturday at WrestlePalooza. John Cena versus Brock Lesnar. I don't think there's any questions about this one. Brock Lesnar at this point should not be losing to a retiring John Cena, especially if he just came back and is going to have a full run with the company. Brock Lesnar is always going to be in that main event scene. And John Cena, regardless of just being champion, is not somebody that necessarily has to win that match. Would I complain if he won that match? No, because I love John Cena, and I think John Cena deserves all the glory and all the praise in this retirement run for everything that he's done. But if you're thinking about it from a creative standpoint, you don't have John Cena win that match because it'll do a lot more to disservice Brock than it would John Cena to lose that match. Now, Brock is going to win that match, in my opinion, but I think that it's going to end with him really putting the beats on John Cena to the point that John Cena's written off TV for a while. And that's how they're going to avoid putting him on any shows between now and November or now in Crown Jewel when he returns for another match. So Brock Lesnar, I think, is going to beat John Cena. He's going to lay John Cena out. We're not going to see John Cena for a while as he'll be rehabbing his injuries from the Brock Lesnar beatdown. The Usos and the Vision, the tag team match, should be a good one. The Vision have shown that they can work really well together, Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. And the Usos are one of the greatest tag teams of all time, so you know what you're getting with the Usos. I'm actually going to pick the Vision to pick up a really big win in this matchup. Regardless, Jey Uso heel turn or not, I think there's going to be some tension between he and Jimmy with this whole LA Knight situation. I think you might even see LA Knight make a showing during the matchup to maybe try to help the Usos beat the Vision because now he feels they're even after what he did to Jey Uso. And I feel like that might throw them off, and the Vision will be able to pick up a big win. But regardless of how it happens, I have the Vision picking up a very big win over the Usos. And the Usos are going to either have some tension during the match, or there will be some tension after the match. Or who knows? You might get the full blown Jey Uso heel turn. And that is how the Vision wins. But regardless, in any scenario, I believe the Vision is going to come out with a win in this matchup, especially because they didn't get it against Jey and Roman at SummerSlam. The final two matches of the night, Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch versus CM Punk, AJ Lee. I think that there's pretty comfortable to call that match for CM Punk and AJ Lee. It's AJ Lee's return match, and she just signed a multi-year deal to have a full-on run with the brand and the company. So I think that with Becky Lynch laying her out on Monday Night Raw last night, as anybody who watches wrestling knows, the person who usually gets laid out closest to the match in the final segment is the one that ends up winning the match. So off that alone, I feel like you can call this for CM Punk and AJ Lee. I think AJ Lee, the way Becky Lynch portrays her character, is more like a scared chicken heel now. I feel like it's more likely that she'll get caught in the submission by AJ Lee and tap out, and that's how the match will end. And it'll set up, CM Punk and Seth Rollins will always be button heads. They'll always go at it. But I think it'll set up now a continued feud between AJ Lee and Becky Lynch for Becky's Intercontinental Championship. That'll probably have some moments on Raw. You might see a match on Crown Jewel, Survivor Series, whatever it may be. I think that Becky Lynch and AJ Lee will be feuding for the Intercontinental Championship following Becky Lynch tapping out on Saturday to AJ Lee in the mixed tag match. Give AJ Lee her big moment after 10 long years of not being with the company. To close the show, maybe not. I think John Cena and Brock Lesnar are closing the show, but the newly announced match between Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre. The feud has had no proper build. You've had a month of Cody Rhodes absent, filming a movie. Drew McIntyre has mentioned his name, talked about why he did what he did, trying to maneuver guys like Randy Orton against Cody Rhodes and say he's doing it for himself, not you. So it's kind of an indirect build towards Cody. Cody's not really actively involved. All he did was return last week, send Drew out of the ring and call for the match at WrestlePalooza. They'll definitely end up having a segment or an altercation on Friday night, but I don't think that build warrants enough to put the belt on Drew McIntyre just yet. I think you need to have a full-blown Cody Rhodes, Drew McIntyre feud. And I thought that was a possible feud going into WrestleMania before everything happened with John Cena, CM Punk, the whole shebang. I thought that was a probable feud for Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. It's that type of match. So Drew McIntyre, long overdue for a match at the undisputed WWE Championship, hasn't had that since Clash at the Castle in 2022, where he was defeated by Roman Reigns and a debuting Solo Sikoa. This match will be a good match, but I don't think it's the last match. I think Cody Rhodes is going to come away with a win in this one and retain the WWE Championship. It's his first defense of his second reign. He had a match right after SummerSlam with John Cena, got laid out by Drew, hasn't been around in a month. I don't think that a month absence is going to warrant him losing his first title defense. I think he beats Drew McIntyre and the feud will continue. Whether or not Drew McIntyre wins the championship afterwards, we'll have to just wait and see. But I think Drew McIntyre would be a phenomenal pick for WWE champion. And I think I've been one of those guys who's been on that road of putting Drew McIntyre back in a title picture and back with a belt for the longest time. I've wanted that forever. When he won the belt against Seth Rollins at WrestleMania 40, I didn't even have Damian Priest in my mind. I was just happy that Drew McIntyre had won a belt, and I thought he was going to be a great champion. I told my family that. I said he should have a really entertaining run. 5 minutes later, he's no longer the champion, hasn't touched the belt since. Had that phenomenal feud with CM Punk. So I think Drew McIntyre's time is coming again to be the WWE champion. And I feel like in my heart that I feel like he's going to be the one that dethrones Cody Rhodes in this reign. But I don't think it's going to happen just yet. So Cody Rhodes will defeat Drew McIntyre and pick up his first defense of his second title reign after dethroning John Cena. So we have Cody Rhodes defeating Drew McIntyre. We have CM Punk and AJ Lee defeating Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. We have The Vision defeating the Usos. We have Brock Lesnar defeating and pummeling John Cena, unfortunately. And we have Stephanie Vaquer defeating Io Sky to become the new women's world champion on Monday nights, which should set her up for a very fun, hopefully very active, very entertaining reign. That does it here for me on Real Graps. I'm Joe Gierer. Thank you for listening on WIUR, Iona University Radio. See you next week.